A very good morning, students. Today we'll be learning about population, size and growth since 1901. The term world population commonly refers to the total number of living humans on the earth at a given time. The three main tools through which we analyze population are population size, which is the number of individuals in the population, population density, how many individuals are in a particular area, and the population growth, how the size of the population is changing over the time. Now the question arises, why should we study population? First, studying how and why populations grow or shrink helps scientists make better predictions about the future changes in population sizes and growth rates. For example, human population growth, understanding how fast will the human population grow and what does that mean for the climate change, resource use and biodiversity can help us studying population growth. Finally, studying population growth gives scientists insight into how people interact with each other and with their environments. This is especially meaningful when considering the potential impacts of climate change and other changes in the environmental factors. How will populations respond to changing temperatures, to drought? Well, the objectives in today's class will learn about the size of the Indian population, growth of the Indian population, census and the SECC, Socio-economic caste census. India is maintaining 16% of the world's population. It shows that there is excessive burden of population in India. 1.6 crore persons are added annually in the country's population. The growth of India's population can be studied in the four periods of time. Stagnant population period, which includes from 1891 to 1921. The rate of growth of population in India was very slow between 1891 to 1921. In 1891 to 1901, population decreased by 4 lakh in the decade. Natural calamities like famines, plague, malaria, etc. played havoc with the lives of the people. 1901 to 1911, population rose by 137 lakhs in these 10 years. Death rate was low as this period remained free from natural calamities. 1911 to 1921, population decreased by 7 lakhs during this decade. Famine, plague, cholera and malaria were the main causes for this decrease. The next period could be the steady growth of population period from 1921 to 1951. In this decade, the population increased at a constant rate. This is why the year of 1921 has been referred to as the year of Great Divide in the population history. 1921 to 1931, population increased by 276 lakhs. Between 1931 to 41, population increased by 3.96 crores during this period and the rate of growth became 14%. 1941 to 51, population increased by 4.28 crores. Due to the partition of the country, the growth rate decreased a little. Period of population explosion is the third phase, which is between 1951 to 1981. 1951 to 61, in this particular decade, population increased rapidly. It is called the period of population explosion. Population increased by 7.82 crores. Between 1961 to 71, in this period, population recorded increase of 10.82 crores. Between 1971 to 81, during this period, population increased by 13.5 crores. And the current phase, which is the period of high growth rate from 1981 onwards. 1981 to 91, in this particular decade, the population was increased by 84.63. 1991 to 2001, the population of India increased by 18.4 crores. Between 2001 and 2011, India's population rose to 1.21 billion in 2011. Now let's look at the growth of population in India and how it came to be. The history of growth in India's population can be divided into 4 distinct phases, the points of division being 1921, 51 and 81. Prior to 1921, India's population was characterized by a checkered growth. Decades of substantial growth regularly alternated with decades of small increase or even negative growth. The Census Commissioner for 1951 census therefore rightly called 1921 as the year of Great Divide. which differentiated the earlier period of fluctuating growth rates from a period of moderately increasing growth rates. The table presents the trends in population growth in India during the last 100 years. The figures for pre-independence period have been adjusted to take care of the partition of the country in 1947. The rate of interdential growth in India's population remained very low till 1921, and in fact the rate of growth was negative during 1911 to 21. The first 20 years of the 20th century thus witnessed a growth rate of only 5.42% in India's population. It may be recalled here that the decade 1901 to 11 was struck by several local famines. For instance, one such famine occurred in 1907 in areas what later came to be known as the Uttar Pradesh. It has been estimated that the epidemic claimed the life of nearly 7% of the population in the country. The central zone comprising Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh had suffered the most. From 1921 onward, a progressive control of the epidemics of cholera and plague resulted in acceleration in the rate of population growth. The decadal rate of growth in the population increased from 11% during 1921-31 to over 14% during 1931-41. The northern zone, which had recorded substantial loss of population during 1901 to 21, witnessed an exceptionally higher growth. The growth rate remained otherwise virtually stable during 1931 to 51. Over a period of 30 years, that is from 1921 to 51, population grew at moderately increasing rate. Strikingly, the central zone recorded a consistently lower growth rate than the nation's average, perhaps of a persistently higher incidence of mortality and substantial outmigration. On the other hand, the western zone experienced a much faster growth in its population. The year 1951 marks the beginning of a rapid growth in the population in the country, as a result of a sharper decline in the death rates after independence in 1947. The acceleration in the growth rates continued up to 1981. The total population increased from 361.09 million in 1951 to 683.33 million in 1981, recording a growth rate of a little short over 90%. The average annual exponential growth increased from 1.21% during 1921-51 to 2.13% during 1951-81. Though all the zones witnessed increase in the pace of population growth, the northern zone recorded the largest acceleration. The next highest growth rate was recorded in the western zone. In fact, as during the pre-independence period, the western zone continued to experience a faster growth than all India average even after independence. At the state level, Gujarat maintained its leading position among the major states in the zone. On the other hand, the central zone continued to record a lower growth than the nation's average, probably due to persisting high mortality rates and outmigration. Uttar Pradesh is found to have recorded one of the lowest growth rates of population among the major states during this period. The southern zone, which had experienced a faster growth than the nation's average up to 1951, experienced a reversal in the pattern. With a much smaller increase in the pace of growth, the zone recorded a significantly lower growth than the nation's average during 1951 to 81. This could perhaps be attributed to outmigration and also to an early decline in the rate of natural growth with decline in the birth rates. Among the major states in the zone, Tamil Nadu recorded the lowest growth rate, followed by Andhra Pradesh. Remarkably, in Kerala, the growth rate maintained an increasing pace up to 1981, and since then, though population continues to grow, the pace of growth has undergone a definite deceleration. It is expected that this deceleration will continue in future also, as decline in the birth rate becomes sharper in more and more states. Thus, the year 1981 can be called yet another year of great divides in the demographic history of the country. In both Kerala and Tamil Nadu, both rates have undergone significant decline during the last few decades. It will be useful to examine the trend in the population growth in the major states of India separately for the last 2 decades. It is interesting to note that the state of Bihar has reported a continuous increase in the growth rate. Much of the gain in the growth rate was witnessed in areas which came to the share of Bihar after its bifurcation into 2 states in the late 1990s. In fact, whole of the state, barring 3 districts, has witnessed a further acceleration in the pace of population growth during the decade. In the newly created state of Jharkhand, gain in the growth rate was confined to its southwestern part mainly. Similarly, in Rajasthan and Uttar Pradesh, the annual growth rate has remained almost constant over the 2 decades. However, almost whole of upper Ganga plain in Uttar Pradesh and a major part of Rajasthan, mainly in the west and the southwest, are reported to have witnessed gain in the growth rate during the 1990s as compared to the previous decade. Elsewhere in the country also, there are evidences of gain in the pace of the growth in population at district level. Many of the districts recording gain in the growth rate are, however, mainly confined to the north and northeastern parts of the country. The spatial pattern in the growth of the population in the country during the 1990s reveals a marked north-south divide. On an average, the northern parts of the country are found to have recorded faster growth in the population during the decade as compared to their counterparts in the south. If a straight line is drawn connecting the southernmost tip of Gujarat in the west and the southern limit of Murshidabad district of West Bengal in the east, one comes across a generally higher growth in the population to the north of this line. The only exceptions to this can be seen in some areas in Punjab plains, in the hilly areas of Himachal Pradesh and Uttaranchal or the Uttarakhand, and in the districts located in eastern Gujarat. A small belt with a somewhat lower growth can also be seen in the southern part of central Uttar Pradesh along the northern margin of peninsular uplands. Likewise, to the south of this line also, notable exception of a faster growth can be noticed in northern Maharashtra in and around the district of Thane. With substantial decline in the birth rates during the post-independence period, these states have already reached a replacement level fertility in the country. The rapid and excessive increase in the population is called population explosion. In India, population has increased tremendously in the post-independence period. It has increased more than 7.8 crores between 1951 to 61. Population has been increasing constantly since 1951. In the year 1991, it was estimated 84.63 crores and in 2001, it increased to 102.87 crores. In 2005, the figure stood at 109.10 crores. The rapid rate of increase in the population is the main problem of this country. Census. Population census is the total process of collecting, compiling, analyzing and disseminating demographic, economic and social data pertaining at a specific time of all the persons in a country or a well-defined part of a country. It also provides the trends in the population characteristics. The Indian census is one of the largest administrative exercises undertaken in the world. The decadal census is conducted by the Office of Registrar General and the Census Commissioner under Ministry of Home Affairs. The population census is a union subject under the Article 246 of Indian Constitution. It is listed at serial number 69 of the 7th schedule of the Constitution. Confidentiality of information. The information collected during the population census is so confidential that it is not even accessible to the courts of law. The confidentiality is guaranteed by the Census Act of 1948. The law specifies penalties for both public and census officials for non-compliance or violation of any provision of the Act. What is the significance of census? Let's look at it. It's a source of information. The Indian census is the largest single source of variety of statistical information on different characteristics of the people of India. Researchers and demographers use census data to analyze growth and trends of population and make projections. It is a good governance. The data collected through census is used for administration, planning and policy making as well as management and evaluation of various programs by the government. Demarcation. Census data is also used for demarcation of constituencies and allocation of representation to Parliament, state legislative assemblies and to local bodies. Better access for businesses. The census data is also important for business houses and industries for strengthening and planning their business for penetration into areas which had hitherto remained uncovered. Giving grants. Finance Commission provides grants to the states on the basis of population figures available from the census data. Now let's look at the history of census. Ancient and medieval period, Rig Veda, the earliest literature, Rig Veda, reveals that some kind of population count was maintained during 800 to 600 BC in India. Arthashastra by Kautilya, written in 3rd century BC, prescribed the collection of population statistics as a measure of state policy for taxation. Aini Akbari. During the regime of the Mughal king Akbar, the administrative report Aini Akbari also included comprehensive data pertaining to population, industry, wealth, and many other characteristics. Pre-independence period. Initial attempts. The history of the census began with 1800 when England had begun its census. In its continuation, a census was conducted in Allahabad in 1824 and in Banaras in 1827-28 by James Prinsep. The first complete census of an Indian city was conducted in 1830 by Henry Walter in Dhaka, now Dhaka. The second census was conducted in 1836-37 by Fort St. George. In 1849, the Government of India ordered the local governments to conduct quinquennial, which is 5-yearly returns of population. First non-synchronous census. It was conducted in India in 1872 during the reign of Governor General Lord Mayo. First synchronous census. The first synchronous census was taken under British rule on February 17, 1881 by W.C. Plowden. Now let's look at some of the major findings in India's census and only some of the major ones. First census 1881. It laid main emphasis on the classification of demographic, economic and social characteristics of the entire continent of British India, except Kashmir and French and Portuguese colonies. The second census of 1891. It was conducted almost on the same pattern as of the 1881 census. Efforts were made for 100% coverage and the upper part of present-day Burma, Kashmir and Sikkim were also included. Third census, which was conducted in 1901. In this census, Balochistan, Rajputana, Andaman and Nicobar, Burma, Punjab and remote areas of Kashmir were also included. Fifth census, conducted in 1921, the decade of 1911-21, has been the only one till now to increase a decadal population decline of 0.31%. 11th census, 1971. It was the second census after the independence. It added a question for information on fertility for currently married women. 13th census, 1991. It was the fifth census of independent India. In this census, the concept of literacy was changed and the children of 7+ age group were considered literate as compared to the 1981 when children up to the age of 4+ were treated as literate. 14th census, 2001. It witnessed a quantum leap in the technology front. The schedules for the phases were scanned through high-speed scanners and handwritten data from the schedules were converted into digitized form through the intelligent character reading. Next important census, 2011, 15th census. In the 2011 census, significant fall in the case of Empowered Action Group states, which is UP, Uttarakhand, Bihar, Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Rajasthan and Odisha were noticed for the first time. Now the latest census, the 16th census of 2021 was postponed owing to the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. However, it will be the first digital census also with a provision for self-enumeration. It is for the first time that the information of households headed by a person from the transgender community and members living in the family will be collected. Earlier, there was a column only for male and female only. Now let's look at the Socio-economic and Caste Census, SECC. The SECC was conducted in 2011 for the first time since 1931. It seeks to canvass every Indian family in the rural and urban India and ask about their economic status to allow center or state authorities to come up with a range of indicators of deprivation which could be used by each authority to define a poor or deprived person. Specific caste name to allow the government to reevaluate which caste groups are economically worse off and which are better off. Now let's look at slight differences between census and SECC. The field of coverage. The census provides a portrait of the Indian population while SECC is a tool to identify beneficiaries of the state support. Confidentiality of the data. The census data is considered confidential, whereas the data of SECC is open for use by the government departments to grant or restrict benefits to the people. What is the significance of SECC? Better mapping of the inequalities. SECC has the potential to allow for a mapping of inequalities at a broader level. It will be useful to establish statistical justification for preserving caste-based affirmative action programs for welfare schemes. Legally imperative. It is also legally imperative as the courts require a quantifiable data to support the existing levels of reservation. Constitutional mandate. The Constitution of India also favors conducting a caste census. Article 340 mandates the appointment of commission to investigate the conditions of socially and educationally backward classes and make recommendations as to the steps that should be taken by the governments. Associated concerns with SECC, which include the repercussions of a caste census. Caste as an emotive element, and thus there exist the political and social repercussions of caste census. There have been concerns that the counting caste may help solidify or harden identities. Due to these repercussions, nearly a decade after SECC, a sizable amount of this data remains unreleased or released only in parts. Caste is context specific. Caste has never been proxy for class or deprivation in India. It constitutes a different and distinct kind of embedded discrimination that often transcends the class. Conclusion. Population study is called demography. In terms of population, only China is ahead of India. India has got only 2.4% of the total land area in the world, but is the home of 16.7% of the world's population. In terms of geographical area, Russia, China, Canada, Brazil, America and Australia are larger than India. Thus, India is the 7th largest country in the world. India's population has grown steadily from 1901 except for a decrease in 1921. It increased from 23.8 crore in 1901 to 36.1 crore in 1951 and further to 102.7 crore in 2001. The present population of India is 138 crores approximately.